Should you have a DBA for two separate businesses? That's the question I'm answering today. Adonai Official wrote, I have a photo booth rental business, but want to venture into vending machine businesses. Would a DBA work for this? It's a great question. The real issue here is, do you want to separate the liability, or do you want to have it consolidated in the same company? So say you have a photo booth rental business and there's a lawsuit from one of your customers against your company. Well, let's say you lose. Everything in that business would be exposed to the lawsuit and paying the judgment to the creditor. So whoever sued you, everything you have in the company is exposed to that lawsuit. That means if you have the vending machine business in the same company, all the value of the vending machines are exposed and you could lose them. So it may be better to have the vending machine business in a separate business entity. That'd be a corporation or an LLC. That way, if there's a lawsuit for the photo booth business, you don't lose the vending machines. And if there's a lawsuit for the vending machine business, you don't lose the photo booths. What's the downside to doing that? Well, it's going to be, you'll have to have separate bank accounts, keep separate books, maybe separate credit cards for each, track your time working for each. If you have employees, they'll have to be separate employees, possibly separate tax returns. So it can just turn into kind of a paperwork nightmare. By the way, too, all of that adds to your expenses for an accountant or bookkeeper, or the work you're doing if you are the bookkeeper. It also adds to your expense for insurance policies because you may have to have a policy for each. It's probably much less expensive to have an insurance policy for one company instead of two. So usually business owners start out with one entity and then they may expand to two entities down the road. And that's because as you start getting more customers and more revenue and more risk, it makes sense to separate that risk between the two companies. But in the beginning, you don't have a whole lot of money, you don't have a whole lot of assets, you don't have a whole lot of risk. So it's simpler and less costly to just keep it in one company when you're starting out. Now, if you have that all in one company, then the question is, do you have a DBA? So for example, let's say you have Photo Booth Delights. That's one company. And then you have a vending machine business. And so you're thinking, well, Photo Booth Delights LLC doesn't really work for a vending machine business. What do I do about that? Well, you could start up a new DBA called Vending Machine Delights, or Vending Machines R Us, or Vending Machine Rentals, or whatever you want to call it. So you're essentially creating a nickname for the original Photo Booth Delights LLC. Two names, one company, one bank account. And by the way, you could have multiple bank accounts, that's fine. But the scenario we're talking about here is where you have a single LLC and you just have different names. The reason you would have a different name or a DBA is for public relations purposes, marketing purposes, branding, advertising. There's no legal distinction. In other words, it's just different names for the same entity. So people set up DBAs because the original name that they had no longer works for all of their purposes. Sometimes a company starts out, they have an LLC that's called like John's Concrete Services. But then John gets into selling other types of materials and concrete is too narrow. So John might expand or set up a DBA that's called John's Hardscape Surfaces. So he doesn't just do concrete anymore, he does other hardscapes. So DBAs are just nicknames. They're just for advertising and marketing purposes. They don't really have a legal effect on the entity. Hopefully that helps answer the question of whether to have a DBA versus two LLCs. As with anything, I recommend you consult with an attorney who can really understand the risks of your business and your plans and what your budget is. If these businesses are million-dollar businesses, well, it's a no-brainer. Set up separate entities. But if they're generating, $2,000 a year, well, that's a case where every penny counts, every dollar counts. It doesn't make sense in that scenario typically to spend the money on two separate LLCs and the startup cost for that, the accounting costs, and all of that. I'm Aaron Hall, an attorney for business owners and entrepreneurial companies. I provide exclusive videos to people who subscribe to my free list, aaronhall.com/free. Go there and sign up. You'll get free videos and free resources to help you as a business owner avoid legal problems, grow a great company, and hopefully create a better life for yourself.